Hello again everybody. Right, I'm making this video as an absolute worst case scenario, case in point of why you should always use a dim bulb tester on an unknown piece of kit, and really, ideally, you should never even plug in an old valve amp or radio that you don't know the history of without getting somebody who knows what they're doing, or knows what to look out for, to actually do a visual inspection before you risk either more damage or just blowing your breaker if you're not using a dim bulb tester to do so, which hopefully would protect you. But from that eventuality, this is an old, I don't know exactly the model, it's a Murphy, probably from the 30s, and it is a basket case. It's in a complete mess. This was the second one that I got up at the junk shop where I got the Pi from. But this one is probably, because the Pi was a 50s one, this one's probably 30s, so it's another 20 years older or so. And the insulation is in an absolutely horrendous state. Again, I know this camera's not great, but this is the mains wire coming in, and it was just a 2-core with a little round 2-pin plug on. So you can imagine, even if somebody thought, oh, let's see what's going to happen with this radio, and they changed it to put even a new 3-pin English one on there, you have a look at this. It's just horrendous. You've got the mains coming in here. The insulation is so degraded that you've got this bare wire where the insulation, you can see where it's just literally cracked. And this is what happens to the really old insulation. It just goes rock hard and it cracks like that, and then just pulls away. So you can imagine the state of the wiring. The other part of this wiring, where it's come through and goes to the switch, I had to mangle this radio just to get the case off it, because I had to hammer the knob off because it was just rusted solid to here. So unfortunately I've damaged the on switch. But again, look at the on switch where the mains cable comes in and attaches with all of these breaks. So any of these could short out anywhere, and certainly short out to the metal chassis. You can see the insulation, not that it's electrical insulation, but just the rubber coating of that goes around the formers here of the mains transformer. It's just rubber, and it's gone hard and just literally cracks like that. So that's the state of this basket case. It really is horrendous. I've taken the valves out, which may be okay. I obviously haven't got a valve tester, so I don't know. But just to give you an idea of the sort of state that some radios can be inside of their chassis, this has actually been doused roughly with white spirit a couple of days ago and left out to sort of air. And even with a brush down, the shit that was on the top of it is rust based in this case. It's not like the last one that's sort of oily crap. This one's a rusty kind of base to it. So it's powdered sort of damp rust on top. So you can imagine damp rust all over, which is a salt at the end of the day. And when it's wet or damp, it may well be conductive. So and then just as the final kind of realization of what you could be dealing with on the inside of an unknown amp, this one is absolutely full of wax capacitors here that are in such a horrendous state. They really are. They're just, they're sticky with like the waxy crap that's come out of them. So you can imagine, even if the wires hadn't shorted out and you did get power to these, plugging straight into the mains, they're going to blow apart. So you can see it's a really old version of a point-to-point style wiring, an absolutely horrendous condition. And this has actually been part brushed out, and this had spiders' webs and again dead wood lice all over it. So it was a complete mess. But it's an interesting model from this point of view. The tuning gang here, which I've freed up a bit with WD-40, you can see the chain going around the top, which is interesting. And then the top part, which got most of the damp, you can see where the chain was rusted, but it's actually movable now, with the dial needle being able to move a little bit more freely. The state of this is it's a mess. But what I'm probably going to do actually put it on. I'll do it on the dim bulb tester, having replaced this mains cable, so that this would be again an indication that if somebody came across this radio and literally thought, right, let's plug it in, to get an idea, just to see what would happen and what protection is afforded by the good old trusty, hopefully trusty, dim bulb tester. So I don't hold much hope really for this radio in any form of, you know, restoration, but it can still be used as an example for hopefully the dim bulb tester offering some kind of protection. But before I do that, obviously I've at least got to replace the mains cable that feeds it and connect to the board here, because obviously these two are completely bare. That would have actually been touching this metal post here, which is part of the point-to-point Bakelite frame. And then the connections that run away from that go to the on switch here and then come back are the volume control and the on switch. And as you can see, the volume control insulation is also completely gone there. So that could have just as easily touched the mains cable if someone had just gone and plugged this in. So a complete mess. So I'll make a decision as to whether I can be bothered to go ahead and actually replace just, you know, the mains cable, and just for the sake of showing a worst case scenario, and hopefully prove that the dim bulb tester would immediately show a short, and you know, you wouldn't be able to go any further or be able to put any more power to this, and hopefully not be able to maybe put 240 volts onto the frame. Not that, you know, if it was still in the case, people would have protection, but with, you know, original wiring like that was on it, which I've cut off because this still had the actual old mains plug, and of course the insulation at the end of that was all broken. Not that, you know, they would have been able to plug it in with that particular old tiny little round style plug on, but you never know. You know, people, especially now with the prices that some radios go for, people might just come across a radio like this and think, oh wow, let's get it on eBay. People are paying stupid money for them. Well, they shouldn't be. You know, it's like all of these fads where people kind of get interested in something and then, you know, it becomes a fad for a while. A bit like, you know, guitar amplifiers are still ridiculous prices now. There's still a good couple of £100 more than I was paying when I was doing valve amps, guitar valve amps a bit more regularly about 10 years ago. I looked at a Marshall Mercury 2060 that I was the first one that I had to get me back into sort of studying electronics and, you know, wanting to learn or recaps my formal electronics from 30 years previously, very basic level. And that Marshall Mercury is now, the guy's asking £650 for you know, a Marshall transistor amp essentially, but has one, the power section in that one is I think it's an EL34, I think, in the Marshall 2060. It's on my website anyway. All of the previous amps that I've worked on, guitar amps, and the ones that I've repaired, or mostly for, you know, for friends or stuff, just to gain experience. They're all up on my stevepedwards.co.uk website, so you can have a look. But that was back in the days before I started sort of like monetizing or thinking about how YouTube was going to grow as a sort of a, you know, an educational platform that it's become. So I used to write everything down just in WordPress posts then, and all that information's still there with the odd video. So if you're interested in valve amps, you can go and have a look at some of those, which contains obviously a lot of technical info, as I was doing the research myself and recapping my electronics and rewriting posts so that I could have a better understanding of how stuff worked myself. So as far as this one goes, I'm going to have a think about it, but I don't know if you can see really. Just, you know, the general condition, as I've said, is absolutely horrendous. I mean, you just wouldn't want to be, you know, attempting to fire this thing up if it was still in its case. I mean, you know, you just could be in for a you know, a bang across the with the mains connecting directly to the chassis, which are, you know, which isn't even earthed, obviously, with the old 2-wire cable on there. So, you know, any of these wires could touch some of the aerial or sockets back here, and then if they plugged it in and touched here, they might get 240 volts. But hopefully, obviously, and without that earth connection in the wire, in the mains wire, then the circuit, you know, depending what kind of fuse box situation someone's got in their house or their home or their garage or whatever, they may not even either trip their breaker or whatever. Hopefully they would if they've got new stuff, because just you know, the 2 wires of live and neutral showing a mismatch between the current flow in each one. With present day breakers, they trip at a very low value, but if someone's got an old fuse box that's got fuse wire in it, you know, who's to say that it might not actually break the fuse wire? So, you know, I just wanted to let people know that this, especially here in the UK, I mean, you know, I watch people like Paul Carlson, and they have so much good quality kit that they get really cheap at secondhand meets, because there's a lot of military gear, because the States was prolific in producing everything. So there's still a lot of really good quality stuff kicking around in America, and so many more people that, you know, you get really good quality equipment for relatively cheap. But Britain is just a basket case in many situations. You know, the sort of crap that's available in second-hand stores, because people have snapped it up and want to flog it on eBay. This can be the sort of crap that we get left, you know, that we still have to pay. I mean, this cost me £10, okay, so it's not so bad. And for me to make a video like this, it's just, you know, as part of my interest, and that's fine. Not that it makes much money, because not many people watch it, but the point is, we get relatively sort of really, really old, really poor condition kit that people are asking stupid money for especially for the condition of what they could be in this particular country with its climate, a lot of wet, a lot of damp, poor storage in people's old barns, and this is the result of that. Absolutely horrendous state. So just be aware, if you know anyone, you know, members of your family that have found a radio and they go, oh, well, let's go and plug it in, please, you know, really think twice before you're going to do that, or you know, go and talk to someone who's got some technical knowledge, who can point you in the right direction, or at least have somebody who's technically proficient. If you are intent on trying to plug something in to see if it's going to work, get someone, or, you know, build a dim bulb tester and put decent wire on it and a plug, at least. But even then, I'm not saying I recommend that. I take it to someone who's a professional or knows, you know, what they're doing. Because you're just going to make it worse, even if, like we saw in the previous Pi video, if there's a potential for that unit to work at all, you're really only going to make stuff worse if you plug it into the mains and you've got, you know, a belly full of capacitors like this inside, these waxy ones that, God's, you know, and most of this is really old, terrible condition capacitors. It's a mess, and you really don't want to be firing that on 240 volts UK mains.